May 17, 1952. 8:43 a.m. Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary. Bumpy Johnson walked through the gates carrying everything he owned in a paper bag. 10 years of his life locked in a cell. 10 years planning what came next. The guards watched him leave. One of them, Officer Martinez, said to his colleague, "That one's different." He didn't read books to pass time. He read books to prepare. Martinez was right, because over the next 3 years, Bumpy Johnson would build the most sophisticated intelligence network organized crime had ever seen. And nobody knew it was happening until it was too late. This is the story of how patience becomes power, how watching becomes winning, and how 3 years of invisible preparation led to 7 words that froze an entire room. Most men leave prison broken. Bumpy Johnson left focused. He was 47 years old, graying at the temples, lines around his eyes, but those eyes were sharp, calculating. He'd spent 10 years in Alcatraz not just surviving, but thinking, planning, visualizing the future, and he'd come to one conclusion. The next war wouldn't be fought with guns. It would be fought with information. He just needed time to collect it. The first person Bumpy visited after release wasn't his wife, wasn't his family. It was a man named Jerome Washington. Jerome was 62 years old, a janitor at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel. He'd been cleaning rooms for wealthy people for 35 years, and in those 35 years, he'd learned something valuable. People don't notice janitors. They speak freely around them, do things they think nobody sees. Jerome had been passing information to Bumpy before his arrest. Small things, who stayed where, who met with whom. Now Bumpy wanted to expand that operation. May 18, 1952. Jerome's apartment in Harlem. Bumpy sat across from him at a small kitchen table. "Jerome, I need your help with something bigger than before." Jerome poured coffee. "How big?" Bumpy laid out his plan. "I need to know everything about the 5 families, where they live, where their families go, what their routines are, their weaknesses, their secrets, everything." Jerome whistled softly. "That's ambitious. Impossible," Bumpy corrected, "which is why nobody will see it coming." Over the next month, Bumpy recruited 12 people. Not soldiers, not enforcers, invisible people. A cab driver named Marcus who worked Manhattan, a coat check girl at the Copacabana named Stella, a shoe shine man who worked Wall Street, a hairdresser in Little Italy, a waitress at Patsy's restaurant, a parking attendant, a newsstand vendor, people who existed in the background, who nobody paid attention to. Bumpy gave each of them the same instructions: watch, listen, remember, report to me once a week, nothing more. The genius of Bumpy's network was its simplicity. He wasn't asking people to spy actively. No wiretaps, no break-ins, no illegal surveillance, just eyes and ears. A cab driver who picked up Tommy Lucchese every Thursday and remembered where he went. A coat check girl who saw which mobsters came to the Copacabana and who they met. A shoe shine man who listened to conversations while polishing expensive leather. Information that seemed meaningless individually, but when compiled, created a picture. June 1952. Bumpy set up his operations center in the back room of a barbershop on 135th Street. Not fancy, just a desk, a filing cabinet, and a wall covered with photographs and index cards connected by string. Every mob boss, every family, every known associate. It looked like a police investigation board, because that's exactly what it was. Except Bumpy wasn't police. He was building leverage. The first target was Tommy Lucchese. Bumpy knew Tommy was ambitious, ruthless, a rising power in the Lucchese family, and like many powerful men, Tommy had patterns, habits, vulnerabilities. Marcus, the cab driver, reported that Tommy went to Sacred Heart Academy every Friday at 3 p.m. Picked up his daughter, Maria, drove her to music lessons every single Friday, without fail. Bumpy made a note. Daughter, music lessons, regular schedule. Stella, the coat check girl, reported that Tommy came to the Copacabana twice a month, always with the same men, always sat at the same table, always ordered the same drink. Another note: predictable, comfortable, overconfident. The hairdresser in Little Italy reported that Tommy's wife came in every Wednesday, talked about her daughter, how proud Tommy was of Maria, how protective he was, how she was his whole world. Final note, weakness identified, loves his daughter more than anything. This process repeated for every boss: Carlo Gambino, Frank Costello, Vito Genovese, Albert Anastasia. Every one of them had patterns, had families, had secrets, and Bumpy was documenting everything, not to use immediately, to store, to file away, to keep as insurance for a day that might never come. That's what made it genius. Bumpy wasn't preparing for a specific threat, he was preparing for every possible threat. August 1952, 3 months into the operation. Bumpy had files on 15 high-level mobsters. He knew where they lived, where their kids went to school, where their mistresses lived, who they owed money to, who owed them money, their habits, their schedules, their vulnerabilities. But he told nobody. Not even his closest associates knew what he was building, because information only has power if nobody knows you have it. Illinois Gordon, Bumpy's most trusted friend, came to the barbershop one day, saw the wall of photographs and notes. "What is all this?" "Research," Bumpy said simply. "For what?" "For when I need it." Illinois studied the wall. "You planning a war?" "No," Bumpy said. "I'm planning peace. This is how you maintain peace, by making sure that if anyone starts a war, they have more to lose than to gain." October 1952, 6 months in. The network was operating smoothly. Information flowed to Bumpy every week. He spent hours organizing it, cross-referencing it, finding connections, finding leverage. He discovered that Frank Costello had a secret doctor he visited every Tuesday. Heart problems. He kept it secret because showing weakness in their world was dangerous. Bumpy filed it away. Potential leverage. He learned that Vito Genovese was having money problems, owed significant gambling debts, kept it hidden from the other families. Another file, another piece of leverage. The most valuable information came in December 1952. The parking attendant, a young man named Jimmy, reported something interesting. He'd seen Albert Anastasia park at a specific apartment building 3 times in 1 week. Always at night, always alone, always stayed exactly 2 hours. Jimmy did some checking. The apartment belonged to a woman named Diana, not Anastasia's wife, his mistress. And Diana had a son, 3 years old. Everyone believed Anastasia had no children with his wife. But this child, this was a secret. Bumpy added it to the file. Albert Anastasia, secret son, ultimate vulnerability. By mid-1953, Bumpy had comprehensive files on every major player. But he still hadn't used any of it. People in Harlem started questioning him, asking why he wasn't more aggressive, why he wasn't pushing back against Italian encroachment, why he seemed so passive. Bumpy would just smile. "Patience," he'd say. "Everything happens when it's supposed to happen." What they didn't understand was that Bumpy was playing a different game, a longer game, a smarter game. The network continued operating through 1953 and 1954. Information kept coming in. Files kept growing. Bumpy added 2 more rules to his network. First, never let your target know you're watching. If anyone suspected surveillance, back off immediately. Second, never use the information unless absolutely necessary. This wasn't about blackmail. It was about insurance, about mutual assured destruction, about making sure that if anyone crossed a line, Bumpy could cross one back. Early 1955. 3 years into the operation, Bumpy's network had grown to 18 people. His files contained information on 23 mob figures, schedules, routines, families, secrets, affairs, debts, medical conditions, everything. But still, nobody knew. The network operated invisibly, reported quietly, and Bumpy waited for the right moment, for someone to make a mistake, for an opportunity to demonstrate what 3 years of patience had built. That opportunity came on November 3, 1955. The meeting at the Copacabana. Bumpy walked in that night carrying no weapon, no backup, just information, 3 years of information. And when Tommy Lucchese said, "Harlem's nothing but trash," when he tried to humiliate Bumpy in front of 20 mobsters, Bumpy finally used what he'd been building. 7 words. "I know where your daughter goes to school." 3 years of surveillance, 3 years of watching Marcus the cab driver pick up Tommy every Friday, 3 years of knowing Maria's schedule, her routine, her vulnerability, all condensed into 7 words. The room froze because everyone suddenly understood. This wasn't a lucky guess, this wasn't a bluff. Bumpy knew, really knew, and if he knew about Tommy's daughter, what else did he know? That's when the fear spread. Because in the days after that meeting, other bosses started asking questions. What does Bumpy know about me? About my family? About my secrets? And they realized they didn't know. Couldn't know. Because Bumpy had been invisible for 3 years. Frank Costello had his people investigate. They found nothing. No wiretaps, no break-ins, no obvious surveillance. How was Bumpy getting information? Costello finally figured it out when he noticed his cab driver was the same guy who'd been driving him for 2 years. Marcus. Costello tested him, asked subtle questions, realized Marcus remembered everything, every conversation, every location, every person Costello had met. Costello could have killed Marcus. But what was the point? The information was already collected. The damage was done. Carlo Gambino discovered it when his wife mentioned her hairdresser. Such a nice woman. Always asks about the family, about Carlo, about the business. Gambino visited the salon, looked at the hairdresser, realized she'd been gathering information for years, through casual conversation, through gossip, through friendly interest. He couldn't prove she was working for Bumpy, but he knew, and he couldn't do anything about it. By December 1955, the word had spread through the 5 families. Bumpy Johnson has a network. Nobody knows how big. Nobody knows what he knows. Nobody knows who's working for him. It could be anyone. Your cab driver, your waiter, your janitor, your parking attendant, anyone who seems invisible, anyone you've been talking around for years. The paranoia was more effective than any threat, because the families started watching their own behavior, being careful what they said, where they went, who they trusted, all because of information they couldn't verify, but knew existed. January 1956, a meeting of the 5 families. The topic was Bumpy Johnson. Carlo Gambino addressed the commission. We have a problem. We've been treating Harlem like a colony. But Bumpy Johnson has been treating this city like a chessboard. He's been watching us for years, collecting information, building leverage, and we didn't notice because we underestimated him. Vito Genovese asked the obvious question. So what do we do? Gambino looked around the table. We leave him alone. We respect boundaries. We respect Harlem. Because starting a war with someone who knows all our secrets, that's suicide. Bumpy never confirmed the size of his network, never revealed his sources, never showed his cards completely. That was the genius. The mystery was as powerful as the reality. Maybe he had 18 sources. Maybe he had 50. Maybe he had been bluffing all along with just a few pieces of information. Nobody knew. And that uncertainty was the ultimate power. Years later, in 1964, a young protege named Frank Lucchese asked Bumpy about the network. How did you do it? How did you watch so many people without them knowing? Bumpy smiled. I didn't watch people, Frank. I watched their habits. People are creatures of routine. They go to the same places, talk to the same people, trust the same faces. I just made sure some of those faces were reporting to me. And I did it slowly. Over years, because if you're patient enough, invisible long enough, you can learn anything about anyone, Frank pressed. But how did you know when to use the information? That's the important part, Bumpy said. Information is worthless if you use it too early. It's like showing your cards in poker. You wait, you watch, you let them make the mistake. And when they cross that line, that's when you reveal what you know. Not to destroy them, to remind them that destruction is possible, to reset the balance. That's what those 7 words at the Copacabana really were. Not a threat, a reminder, a demonstration of 3 years of invisible work, a warning that everyone had something to lose, and that Bumpy Johnson knew exactly what that something was. 3 years of watching, 3 years of collecting, 3 years of patience, all for 7 words that lasted 3 seconds, but changed everything. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button. Drop a like if you understand that real power isn't instant, it's built over years of invisible work. Share this with someone who needs to know that patience defeats strength. And in the comments, tell me, would you have the patience to watch and wait for 3 years? More legendary stories coming next? Don't miss them.